When I go in for a strong close after having that full feminine energy and that calmness and say, "Are you ready to sign up?" They're like, "Oh, dang, okay, yes, I am." Like they're not expecting it almost. The balance of the masculine and the feminine in a sales call it's money. Connecting people for interviews together and just like that matchmaking. I'm like, "Oh, you're going to love each other." And like, this is going to be great. I love doing that. Yeah, like podcasting and doing sales calls and being on video. I get energy from doing it. Like I could be tired at the beginning of a call, but by the end, I'm energized because it's like a solar panel. I just put myself up to the sun and the sun is the people. And I'm just like, I'm feeding off of it.
Get ready for the next iteration of you on your path to becoming wealthy. On this show, you'll get the insider's view on wealth creation, the class none of us got taught in school, with my co-host, daughter, and beginning investor, Sophia Bosch. And now, let's get started.
Welcome to Becoming Wealthy. I am your host, Michelle Bosch, with my co-host,
Sophia Bosch.
We are excited to have in our first recording of 2025 a dear friend and an amazing powerhouse, in the business world. And I can't wait for you to meet her, Sophia. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce her. Her name is Jessica Rhodes. Jessica founded Interview Connections. Interview Connections is pretty much, I would say, the pioneer booking agency for podcasts when podcasting was not even a thing in industry. And now basically she's a pioneer of an industry that actually helps determine presidential elections. Can you believe that? And so her company, they've done over 30,000 or organized over 30,000 interviews for their clients, over 800 clients. And they don't just basically marry, one podcast host with a guest, but they actually also help both the host and the guest make the most out of that time together so that they can actually reach the audience and it become a great marketing engine, and compounder of leads for both the host and for the guest. So with any further ado, Jessica, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here with you both.
I am so honored to have you here. I mean, from the moment I met you, I believe at one of our premier events, we've been in a mastermind together, Jessica and I, with our mentor, mutual past mentor. And she, along with her, partner, were there, Margie, business partner. And I was immediately like taken aback by just the poise, the maturity. I mean, the go-getter attitude, how driven, ambitious, how sharp and smart, like wicked smart, Sophia. These two ladies were there and just so young. And I'm just so excited that you get to meet her. Jessica, so I know that, I said in the interview and introduction right now that you went ahead and pioneered this industry. What was it like to pioneer and be the first one? Because when you're the first one, you usually are the one that gets arrows in your back.
Yes, I've had a few of those.
Yeah, right.
I like that metaphor because I haven't heard that, but that perfectly describes some things that had transpired in the early years. And, what it was like. I mean, number one, the fact that I started the business when I was 25 years old was a huge advantage because I was very young and naive. So there was far less failure. There was far less fear of failure because my goal was to be home with my baby and make an income from home. So as soon as I hit that goal, I was like, cool, awesome, this is great. Now the rest is like, let's keep going. Let's see what else we can do. But there were no other agencies that offered this service. So I had no model to replicate. I had no pricing structure or, client work agreements. Like there was nothing. I had to create it all. And my dad was my first business coach. So he helped me tremendously figure out packages and pricing. And it was a constant responding to how quickly a business owner said, yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, oh, I should probably raise my prices. That was way too low.
Yeah, I've had some of those experiences where you're like, okay, my negotiation skills, I guess, were not the best. It was our very first land deal. We had the property under contract for like $600. We go and we put it for sale by owner. The neighbor comes out and he says, we've been wanting to reach the owner, and would be interested in buying it if you'd be willing to sell it for 4 grand. We're like, my God, we paid $600, 4 grand. Yes, but the property was worth a multiple of that. So I get it when you say that you're like, okay, I'm bringing tremendous value here. and, and
Absolutely. It took a while to learn what the value is that I was actually bringing. Because from my perspective, I was still in the hourly mindset. It's not that hard for me to do this, so I can charge $100 a month. But then as I watch the results that my clients got, I'm like, oh, they're bringing in tens upon thousands, millions of dollars from this. I'm like, I should probably charge something that's proportionate to that value.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, so wait, hold on. Can we go back a second? How did you come up with the idea for starting it just in the first place?
Oh, good question. So my dad is a business coach and he had a newsletter marketing company and he had been doing some podcasting and podcast guesting. They didn't call it podcast guesting in 2012 and 2013, but he had been getting interviewed on podcasts. And so he asked me if I would be his virtual assistant and start booking him as a guest on podcasts. So I was doing it just for my dad as his virtual assistant, freelance, like a 1099 contractor. And then I started taking on some other clients. And as I kind of witnessed and responded to the demand and the interest, and I enjoyed doing it, that's kind of what sparked the idea. And my dad helped me come up with it because I was doing other things too as a virtual assistant. I was doing some client support work, some sales work, some social media marketing, but all that I just kind of learned how to do and did it. But the like connecting people for interviews together and just like that matchmaking, I'm like, oh, you're going to love each other. And like, you know, this is going to be great. I love doing that.
It is like matchmaking, absolutely. Yeah. Now, like I said earlier, I was so impressed when I first met you and Margie, and just the level of clarity and direction that you guys, exuded in your life, in your business. Was it always like that? Or it was something that, clarified along the way? And maybe you can tell me a little bit about masculine versus
Yeah,
feminine leadership in finding your way in that clarity.
absolutely. So in the beginning, probably in the first like 5 to 6 years, I did have clarity. I knew what I wanted. I set my goal. I started the company halfway through 2013. So then 2014 was my first full year, and I set a goal. I wanted to have a six-figure business, which is $8,333 a month. Like I knew the amount. And so then July, I was making $9,000 a month, and I'm like, amazing, six-figure biz, kept that going and just doubled the revenue every single year. So we were just taking off and doing great. And then in 2017, I had a goal. I said, I want to have employees. I want to have an office. So I did that. And then my vision and my clarity for what I wanted kind of waned because I kind of had set out to, I achieved more than I ever thought was possible. But that's when Margie came into the business and she had a clear vision. So we kind of passed the baton, to each other in terms of like vision and what we want. And I really have learned about masculine and feminine leadership just recently. But when I look back at the last 11 years of being an entrepreneur, it's so clear because that masculine energy is that driver, that doer, the action taker. I have been a doer and an action taker as long as I can remember. Like my best friends from childhood they would always call me a doer. They're like, in college, they were like, Jess, you're such a doer. It's like, I was always like,
Why I want just to talk about this because you have been exhibiting a lot of that. However, I also think of you as a little bit of a unicorn, Sophia, with your creativity, with your love for the seats and painting and so on. But no,
nosy the best.
no. But I think it's like sometimes you don't recognize what a unicorn you are until you see or you hear from someone else and their own experiences. So keep going, Jess. Keep going.
Well, out of curiosity, have you guys done your human design? Like, do you know what Sophia's human design is?
Sophia does not know. I do know. I'm a projector, a 3-5 projector. So
Okay. So the 3-5 is all about, I forget which one it is, but it's about, I think it's the three line that is you learn through trial and error. Like
Yeah.
you take action, you learn. Because when you said that, I wonder if Sophia has a 2 or a 4, because I'm a 2-4, as is Margie. And what I've learned about that is I think it's the 2 line has a very hard time seeing their own brilliance.
Amazingness. Yeah. They're afraid.
So, like, I hear you talking about me and how brilliant and smart I am when my biggest insecurity is not being smart. I don't think I'm that smart. Like, I can't see my own. It's very hard to see what comes naturally, like what I'm naturally brilliant at. So
Yeah.
I just find that super interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but where I took us on a tangent with the human design.
No, that sounds very similar to me. I feel like I trust I have to hear it from other people, but then I have a hard time believing them
Yeah,
also.
I would be so. You have to test me after it when you figure it out, because I would be so interested to know that, because it does.
From
That's how it
what I
feels.
know, from what I know of human design, and we're gonna actually do this as soon as we're done with the podcast. We're actually gonna go in and see what you are, Sophia.
Okay.
But I could bet by the way that she basically works in life, I bet you she's a generator. It's
Yeah,
she and Jag are these never-ending, basically engines of energy, and
you
it's
could
like
just generate the energy.
they constantly have a motor going, and so you probably are.
I'm a generator.
Yeah, yeah, generator as well. Yeah.
And that's
So
why, yeah, like podcasting and doing sales calls and being on video, I get energy from doing it. Like I could be tired at the beginning of a call, but by the end, I'm energized, because it's like a solar panel. I just put myself up to the sun, and the sun is the people, and I'm just like, I'm feeding off of it.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, going back to, to the question of clarity,
Yeah.
so then Margie brought the clarity, and then if you look now in retrospect, there was a period of time that it was a lot about doing, and even I would say even today in anything that we want to do, there's an aspect of doing, but there's an aspect of what, just would you describe as the other side?
Receiving. Yes, like receiving. There's the doing and the receiving. And that has been the biggest key to the growth we've experienced over the last year. Like my ability to learn how to receive, you know, receive anything, receive support, receive praise, receive money, receive intimacy, receive anything, like everything that comes in. I've really learned about that balance, because before I was just all doing, 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 doing. If we didn't hit the goal, we had to do more. And now I work until I can say full clarity, I've done everything I can. I've done everything I can. And now I need to step back and let the results come in.
Yeah, yeah. And that's super important, because I think when you're driven and ambitious, it's that receiving and having that patience and that trust that what you have done is enough, that you have an identity where you identify yourself as like being enough, and what I bring to the table is enough, and now let the chips fall where they may, and having that full trust that amazing things are going to come into your life, from the work that you've put in. Kind of like your physics test. She texted us today saying, "Oh my God, this was giving her a little bit of trouble at the
Yeah.
beginning of the year, and
Oh,
her final was a 97." I'm like, "Oh wow, a 97! Such a nerd."
well, physics. Okay, physics is just physics. It's like hard wherever you go. But
Yeah, yeah,
Science was always hard for me. So,
yeah,
yeah.
so it's interesting, but it's just always challenging. And so
yeah.
Jess, you talked a little bit about being on sales calls. We spoke about how you're the top producer, in your company. What has made the difference in your ability to um just close sales? Number one, you one on
Yeah.
one, and then maybe
Mhm.
later we can talk a little bit about bringing in team to help you.
Yeah. So the biggest difference, the biggest thing is learning to be learning to have a regulated nervous system in the conversation. Like
Okay, what is
being,
that?
yes.
Tell
So
Yeah, and tell me.
the nervous system is it's basically the it's like the circuit breaker of your body. Like you have a circuit breaker in your house, that's all the wires, and that's where all the power is going out into the various rooms so you can turn on the lights. And your nerve, like you have that in your body, it's your nervous system. And so there's nerves that go all through your body. And when you're dysregulated, when your nervous system is dysregulated, you're stressed, you're tense, your body's tense, you have a headache, you have a stiff neck, you have, pain in your body. You sometimes, when you're dysregulated, like your vision can get blurred. Like, have you ever been stressed to the point where your vision starts to just get blurry? Like, yeah. And so that's your nervous system telling you, you got to relax. Like you got to calm down. It's your body's literally telling you, you've got to relax. Like you have to calm down. And so when you're really like, I used to be so dysregulated, I would have constant pain in my neck. It was, I lived with it. It's just right in the back of my neck. It's just the tension of the stress. And so when I learned tools, I use a site called Brain Based Wellness, which Margie co-owns and is the CEO of as well. I learned about this methodology called applied neuro, which gives you very simple tools, as simple as like, tapping on your cheekbone, because that's part of your like optical nerve and just lots of little things like that. And so when I learned how to be calm and like regulated in a sales call, I can actually listen to what the other person's saying and read their body language to the point where it's sort of like when you're coaching, you really need to let, God, the universe speak through you. And so I believe that the correct questions and the right things to say to lead the person to a yes, it's going to come through me. But if I'm all stressed and blocked, I'm not going to have a clear like portal. It's like if it's like when there's a traffic jam, you can't get where you're going. I need to clear the traffic jam so that the right questions and the things to say come through, because I don't always know how the conversation's going to go. I was just talking to my salesperson about this. I listened to one of his calls and the lead was very closed off, like didn't give him much to work with. Whereas other leads are like an open book. They're telling you what they're thinking, what they're feeling. They're just telling you what they need to hear. Whereas other people are just very like it's like pulling teeth. And so you never know who you're going to get and how the call is going to go. But as long as you're very regulated and connecting, you can trust that you're going to get the right questions to ask them.
So there's a lot of trusting now that we've talked about right now in these last few minutes of conversation. It's a very feminine approach versus a masculine approach to sales would be following a script that is, that is really structured and not really flexible and not really, and just doing it and pushing herself through that conversation regardless of how she feels, versus first checking in with herself, figuring out how am I doing, some self-awareness of how am I feeling, and then dial, to have a phone call.
It is really a feminine approach. And I listen to sales experts. I listen to Alex Hormozy and Jeremy Miner, and I do get and receive the tactical sales skills. Those are super important, knowing how to close and knowing like, scale of 1 to 10, where are you at in terms of signing up today? And then what would it take to get you 10? Like all that stuff is super, super important. You can't just show up on a call and being like, okay, and then let's go. Like you have to have the tactics, but then also the ability to like receive the intel from your higher power or from your subconscious, like whatever, might be blocking it, to guide them. And then the reason it's super important to have that regulated nervous system is because there is a transference of energy. You can feel it in the room when someone's super stressed. And have you ever been on even a Zoom call and you just like feel relaxed? You're like, why do I feel so relaxed? Because the other person's very regulated and calm. And you're just like, I just want to talk to you more. Like you can feel that from somebody. So when you're able to have that transference of energy. And I know this is medical because I have a client who's a medical doctor and he told me, he's like, that's what we call in medicine. So this is not woo-woo, this is science. Like there really is a transference of energy when you're calm and regulated, and that makes someone feel safer and more comfortable to say yes, or at least to be honest about what they're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating, Jessica. I don't think we've had, I think, an expert in sales, talk about some of the tactical stuff,
Yeah,
but
like certain things like words that you should avoid because they have like a negative connotation, or like
yeah, even
if like you don't realize it, you're subconsciously you like
And those are valuable. But
Yeah.
there's
100%.
yeah, and like Jess said, but this is immense valuable too, because it really it makes, I think, the process more enjoyable and effortless. And heck, we're here in this life, Sophia, to follow the bliss, to follow the joy, and even if we're going to be working on something, that we're passionate about, and putting, sometimes a little bit of time and effort and energy into it, let's do it while enjoying, while having fun. Yeah.
And you are absolutely unstoppable as a woman or a man. It doesn't matter because everyone has feminine and masculine energy, but we're ladies here. So, like, as a woman, for you to show up and have all those tactics that your other guests talked about, the knowing what to say, like, when I go in for a strong close after having that full feminine energy and that calmness and say, "Are you ready to sign up?" They're like, "Oh, dang, okay, yes, I am." Like, they're not expecting it almost. Like, the balance of the masculine and the feminine in a sales call is it's money.
It's awesome, awesome. Now, so this is you, and now building a team and passing on this knowledge to a to somebody that comes, or even just finding that person.
Yeah.
Tell me what you have done different, because I know you guys have had team, for a while, and I think for all of us, sometimes the team grows, sometimes it shrinks, it grows again. What are you doing different now, as you're recruiting somebody in sales? Because this is very relevant, I think, now, not just for your industry or our industry in real estate, but I think for anyone that has a business, and they want that business to not just depend on them to create sales.
Yeah, absolutely. Hiring the correct salesperson has been a game changer. And the first, in return, in terms of how we recruited them, I leave that all up to manifestation. I feel like it was lucky, but we just manifested the perfect person. We did the postings on LinkedIn and Indeed and all of that, but the absolute perfect person who had been manifesting this job, we found them and we're like, how did this? I don't even know how this happened. But in terms of what I'm doing differently now with this person is, number one, I set clear standards and expectations from day one, from the interview. I would literally say, my expectation is, and I would be extremely explicit with what my expectation is and what would happen if that expectation was not met. And so that way I can go back to that if there's ever, because nobody's perfect. Sometimes there's missteps. And I could say, this is my expectation. Here's my expectation of when, so standards, expectations communicated clearly is a game changer. I was not doing that correctly before because I was so deathly afraid of losing people that I would just be like, it's okay. And now I'm like, I'll be okay. I've learned that I'll be okay. If somebody leaves, I'll find somebody else. So clearly communicating expectations. And then in terms of tactics of having a salesperson, I've learned that listening to their sales calls and giving feedback and role playing. Those are the three things.
Okay.
Listening to the calls, giving feedback, role playing, drilling it. That's really it.
That's where the gold is. And I know that, you had a recent hire that I think within the first few weeks, I mean, had already a paid in full.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he's crushing it. Like, it's been great. And I learned like that, role playing consistently is important because the perfect salesperson, I don't think, I mean, maybe they exist, but I think everyone needs the motivation. They need the structure. Maybe you get to a point like Alex Ramosi says, like, or you can meet with the salespeople once a month, you just let them fly. And so I know that's out there, but they still need motivation. They still need the proper incentives strategically offered and things like that. So you still have to lead effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And now what I love about this is that, she has developed a certain level of mastery on sales, on recruiting team, on, really regulating her nervous system, on really connecting at a deeper level with the person that she is trying to enroll of being of service in. So she brings all of that expertise, and now this is in her ability to acquire new clients to come and do basically podcast guesting with her. But she brings those skills now to the other side of her business, because now the other side of her business is actually people pitching basically these clients to hosts of other podcasts. And all of that amazing knowledge now gets transferred over here so that you can stand out and become, a category of one. And actually, people that may have normally, if you would have reached out, hey, I would like to be on your podcast, or would you like to be on mine, might have said no at the beginning. When you have somebody like Jess and a team that Jess is training, and all of these things, you are able to do incredibly, incredibly well when it comes to getting, booked on podcasts. And that's basically how our relationship continue to grow over the years. Now, I think just for myself and for Dad, she has been connecting us and doing amazing matchmaking with people basically that are hosts of either podcasts where we wanted to go and talk about our education, our coaching company, or podcasts where we wanted to go and talk about fundraising for our large multifamily projects. Actually, both you and Margie have invested in one of our
Yeah.
projects. So it has been really instrumental in us putting the word out there. In I would say two kinds of industries where you need a little bit of more than just the 1 minute that you scroll on TikTok, to learn more about someone before you give them a whole lot of money. And so that's what, has been transformational for us also, Jess, in having your team, help us is that, in our industry, so we need a little bit more than just a minute or 30 seconds as someone is scrolling, and podcasting is the perfect avenue because now you have this. We have the last, I don't know, 20, 25 minutes of really getting to know, Jess and her expertise. So Jess, so we are now a year into the Becoming Wealthy podcast. This year for 2025, we have amazing plans, and we would love to get, I think, younger people, Sophia's age, into, to become guests of the podcast. What advice would you have for us there? And what advice would you have for Sophia when she goes podcasting on other people's podcast? When she
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as finding these like ideal guests that are kind of younger and that, I would kind of build out that avatar. Like, who is the ideal guest? Like, what types of stories do you really want to feature? What are the unique aspects that you would want to feature? So I tell podcast hosts when they're thinking like, what types of guests do you want? Like, what do you want your listeners to hear? What do you want them to feel when they hear the show? Is it specific things? You're kind of much more story based. I know we've given some tips, but it's also story. It's kind of flows through both the the masculine and the feminine, right? The stories and the actual action steps. And so think about what would you want your listeners to hear. Are there specific types of stories or things that people have overcome or ways that, younger people have become entrepreneurs? And I would first tap your network because obviously so many young people do have like big social media presences now.
Yes.
So they're out there, but recommendations from your network are going to bring the best guest suggestions. So that's where I would start. That would be my advice to start. Um, yeah.
Now, she has gone on two podcasts now. She has gone on the Carrot podcast, which is a real estate podcast. They were so excited, to have her on, I think back in May. She had closed just in April her first deal where she had made over $36,000.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That's incredible.
And then the second one was called, I think, the Young Boss podcast, and they just wanted to also hear about the deal, but hear about just your entrepreneurial ventures and basically your approach also to just I guess being a young boss.
Yeah.
And what does that come with? Sometimes it comes with people your age not really understanding you and so on and so forth. And so what would be
Yeah.
a pieces of advice for um for
For me, basically, how like of course it depends on the podcast what
Yeah.
it like the Young Boss podcast versus Carrot, which
Yeah.
is a real estate, the avatar is different. One is specifically geared towards people like me, and then one is geared towards typically more professional, older people in the real estate world, have been there longer, like not like a 16-year-old that just
Yeah.
made money off a deal. Like, it's not, of course they wanted to hear me speak, but it's different. So like, just in general, when going into different situations, what's the best thing I can do?
Yeah, I would make the most of the pre-conversation with the host. So some podcast hosts will have a pre-call where it's a separate like it's a separate scheduled meeting before the recording, and
Yeah.
ask them like what, you could ask them what episode of their podcast is the most downloaded. So listen to that episode, so that will tell you what their listeners like the most. And then ask them, tell me more about your audience. You can guess based off of the description of the show, but they know their listeners better. So ask about their audience and ask, how can I make this a great episode for you? Like, what are you looking to get out of this episode from me? Because I want to make sure that, like, I make you look good. I want to make sure that this is a really great episode. So you tell me. They'll tell you. They'll say, we love actionable steps. We love stories of how you got started. We love the stories of the failure. They'll tell you. And so then you can really customize that. So I would make the most of that green room and then just be yourself. Be yourself. Don't worry about trying to sound any certain way. The best podcast interviews are where you just feel like you're listening to an authentic conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and she has right now, I would say the direction of wanting to go to college, have the actual college experience, and major in finance, but have also a minor in arts history. Sophia has always been loving all things art. She envisions herself being the owner of an art gallery in the future.
Something in that realm.
And I'm like, you could start already. I mean, if this is the direction, you could start already going and doing some podcasting and trying to basically just get in the scene, and talk to, I don't know, people in that world, and any suggestions that you might have there.
I mean, like the first thing that comes to mind is to go on podcasts about like alternative investing, because art investing is another type of all of investing. So like being an art dealer, they are brokering very large sales just like you are with land. So I think there's a very clear tie-in, and I love your idea to just like start networking, start going on those podcasts from the feminine energy. Just visualize yourself being in an art gallery, visualize like how it's going to feel, because the more you visualize it, the more the universe is going to conspire to have it come true. But then as far as action steps, like your success already as a real estate investor, like I am certain there's podcasts out there where there's a nice overlap of real estate investors and other like art investors. I would go down that route just to start making those connections.
Do you see the outside the box thinking about the alternative investing and how art basically is also a place where you can park money, preserve cash, and not just preserve cash, but actually appreciate, because the art will appreciate in value.
Because it is at that point. I mean, everything is technically finite, but art, you only have for an artist too, you only have their lifetime, and depending on what the art is, there could be it could be a small range of actual items.
Yeah.
Too.
Well,
So
yeah, like
lifetime.
Yeah, we have a piece of art, Jess, that we bought actually
Years ago.
Years ago. We saw the art gallery when Jack and I were beginning our journey. And we remember seeing art there that no way in our wildest dreams we thought we could afford. Many, many years later, for an anniversary, for our wedding anniversary, Jack is like, oh my gosh, we had seen a piece. The artist was still producing similar style stuff. He gets it. And now I think in a matter of probably 6 or 7 years, because this was right before COVID, I think when he finally went ahead and made the investment, which is an alternative investment,
It has
Yep.
on him.
it has quadrupled in value just because the artist basically just went crazy over COVID, I
The
guess.
gallery also promoted them even more. Like,
Yeah.
they became one of the major.
So I like this alternative investing, angle that you have there, and I'm sure that just like you had this right now for us, that's what you bring for other clients, just like, okay, how
For sure.
yeah.
Well, some
Yeah.
prefer art because it hangs in their house. They love it and they get to see it every day. It's not something where it's like it's in your financial planner or whatever deals with it, like, or
Oh, yeah.
you barely touch it, whatever. At least it's here in your house. It's like nice.
You could even really pioneer a space within the art world that focuses on investing because most people will think art, oh, that's art. That's totally separate from this finance thing. But like you said, this art is like really nice, high-end art. That is an investment.
Yeah.
And so I like this. And tap into skiing.
There are, of course, like certain stipulations. Like, I know a lot of the art world is very like tricky in the sense that a lot of artists don't like galleries just because they make a lot more money than they do. They feel like they're getting cheated in some way. So if you all of a sudden you start putting this as an investment, they're like, "Oh, people are just buying it for the money. They're not actually wanting like my passion that I put into it." So there's certain things that you have to go around. But I think if you target the right audience, there's of course space for that.
Yeah.
Well, there's always going to be. I was just listening to Mel Robbins interviewed on a podcast. So I would say for that, let them. If those artists don't like the model, let them. Or you could create a new model. Like I created Interview Connections because the PR retainer model where there was no guarantee of what they were going to get. I'm like, that doesn't work for small business owners. I don't have 10 grand a month to just put on a retainer. So knowing what certain artists don't like, maybe you could invent a different type of art gallery that has a totally different structure. And actually, anything's possible.
So this is yeah. I love where all this is going, and I think I think it segues really well into the last question that I had for you because I want to honor your time, Jess. I know that you're Eastern time zone.
This is so fun.
So you know, you right now, or us right now, we had a moment of I feel like it was God's own moment. There was a lot of creativity going on. The creative juices were flowing, outside the box thinking, ideas. Tell me about just God's own in general. What does it mean to you?
Yeah.
And how did you apply this new way of being to a recent trip that I know that you did with your daughter?
Oh my gosh. That whole thank you for giving me the space to talk about this because I cannot it's hard to find the words. I think I have just come down from the high of that weekend. So, the God zone, as coined by our mentor, Melanie Ann Layer, is the creator zone. So it's when you're in creation. And I had been visualizing this trip to Los Angeles. Now, we live in Rhode Island. So Los Angeles is a world away for us as across the country. It's just a different vibe. We live in a small New England town. So LA is I just love visiting it. I don't want to live there, but I love visiting it. It's so fun. And I knew my daughter would love seeing it too. And so I had just been thinking, I wasn't ever thinking like, I really want to go because I knew that if I was ready, I would book the trip. So I never had this energy of lack in I want to go, but I can't. It was always just visualizing it and thinking about it and what it would feel like. So I've been visualizing it all year. And then like looking at 2025, I thought to myself, I really like trips for my birthday. My birthday's on January 18th. And I also like experience gifts for Christmas. And so I blended the two and I said, this is going to be a birthday gift to myself and also an experience trip for Lucy. Now, I got, as a 36-year-old woman, I watched Gilmore Girls growing up. It was a show on in the early 2000s.
Yes.
Okay, you're a Gilmore Girl? Yes. All right. So So I watched Gilmore Girls growing up, and of course I've rewatched it every single year, like most women. So
Yes, in the fall, you always start. Yep.
always. And so I got my daughter into it. She started watching with me, and it is her go-to show. She will just watch it all the time. It's like her podcast. She just always has it on. Like, and so I booked a trip, and I thought we would go to the Warner Brothers lot to see the set. And I've done that before. I actually did that with Margie. And normally when you go, it's just not dressed up at all. It's just you kind of have to, oh, that's Luke's. Okay, it doesn't look like that anymore, but it's Luke's. And so I'm talking with Margie and I'm telling her about the trip, and she goes, "Isn't the Warner Brothers lot made up as Stars Hollow for Christmas?" And I was like, "Wait, what? I didn't know that." And so I had booked the trip for January 10th and 11th, and the last day of the Stars Hollow experience was January 5th. I'm like, I should move the dates. And so I'm going, Margie's like coaching me through this. And I'm like, but it's like the flights would be like way more expensive. And I've already booked the trip. And she's like, do it, do the trip the right way instead of doing it like not the right way and then trying to go back and kind of recreate it. Like just do it right from the beginning. Like you can afford this. I'm like, you're right. I am. It's just that money mindset of just like, I got a deal. And so I moved the dates and then I said, I am going to manifest meeting the actor who plays Luke Danes because he's very much a part of this. And I'm like, I put it out there to our mastermind and I said, ladies, hold this vision. I don't know if he's going to be there. It's not like he's there every day, right? They have this going on every day through the winter season. And I'm like, I'm going to picture it. We're going to meet in Luke's diner. And so then we go and now we're in the tour and it's crazy, right? But okay, yeah, so we did.
Doesn't I've seen like videos where like actors like pull up in a golf cart or something.
So we're like, they take us on the tour with that golf cart, right? And then they drop us off at Stars Hollow, and then we get to walk through the town. And there's like hundreds, maybe 1,000 people milling about, right? Because it's a whole experience. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody, like in my fantasy, none of these other people were here, but that's okay. And so we're in line to go into Luke's because there's a huge line of people getting photo ops inside the diner. And we're in line, and then the actor who, I'll just call him Luke, okay? So Luke is going to go speak outside of Stars Hollow High, but we're over here in a line. And I don't want to get out of line to go see him speak. And so we made a friend in line, and she's like, oh, I'll hold your spot. And I said, we do not chase, we attract. He will come to us. And we stayed in line.
Do not chase. That's a very feminine.
Yeah, I said we
to chase the,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
to basically be magnetic.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I had said to my line friend, her name is Desiree. I said, none of these other people were here in my vision, but that's okay. And so we wait in line, and if this line is like 2 hours long, like it's a huge line, and we're getting to the beginning, and the timing is starting to come together to where he's on his way over. We heard he's coming to the diner next, and we are at the beginning of the line. Like we are next to go into the diner to meet him when he arrives in the diner. And we met him in the diner with none of those other people around. Of course, there were some people, right? But like we got to go and we met him, and I get chills like it was the most amazing experience. Like when sometimes like I've met some actors and it's just kind of like, oh, they're kind of like, I wish I didn't ever meet them, like it's cool, but it's like not what I expected. He was wonderful. Like we walked in, our friend was dressed as Luke, and he goes, there you are. I've been like, he was just so cool. And he's like, who do we have here? I was like, I have my daughter. And he gives us all hugs and we take a picture. And I'm just like, and then we just got to sit on the grass outside Stars Hollow High and drink our coffee from Luke's diner.
Ah, yes.
I'm like, I am in Gilmore Girls right now. Like I am in the show. Like it was absolute, and it was also such a portal because I live in Rhode Island. Like I live like an hour and a half from where the town that it was based off of. I felt like I was in a portal back home, but I was still in LA. Like it was wild.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing.
So this was definitely an experience that was in creation mode for some time, and then I mean she was magnetizing the perfect element, the perfect opportunity, and I'm so happy that you and Lucy got to have this time together. Because now as Sophia gets older, we have her, she's finishing her junior year in high school. We have her one more year, of high school, and then she's off to have this college experience. And And I now that am in tune with this God zone, I'm now really soaking in everyday moments, much differently than I did before. And I think, I mean, I wish I would have known this earlier, and I would have tuned into this earlier. But hey, there's now is always a perfect time, right, to start and make
Yeah.
everyday moments special, and transferring some of this knowledge about being in the God zone and being on creator mode to Sophia. So thank you so much for giving us a beautiful example with your own daughter of creating such a moment over
Thank you.
a few years. And I'm glad that you landed from your high with us today.
I know, the timing is so perfect. Like, literally, we took a red-eye home Sunday to Monday, and now it's Tuesday, and so I'm just fresh in the vibes. Like, we were saying literally in line, we were like, I said to my friend, I said, "We're gonna say thank you, yes. Not please come over. Thank you, yes. Thank you, yes." Like, that was the vibe, and it was just absolutely amazing.
Yes, yes, yes. And I wanted to make sure, Jess, before we wrap up, that if anyone is listening to this episode and is thinking, my goodness, my business needs a strategy that is not just dependent on a platform, on paid traffic, but on a strategy that where I am able to connect, one on one, with the host, with the audience, really be in people's ears. Where can people learn more about, Interview Connections and what you do and can reach out to you?
Yeah, so our website is interviewconnections.com. So that's the easiest place to go and book a call. And I would love to talk with you and yeah, just walk you through the process. So yeah, interviewconnections.com is the best place to go.
Awesome. And now my final question is, any piece of advice for either a woman starting or a person that is already, on their way, in business, any piece of advice that you might have for them that could basically help them compound, I would say the impact that they're wanting to have, in other people and in their clients and in their audience.
Yeah, it's so I don't know how to paraphrase this. So I'm just going to quote Jay Massey, who has the podcast Cashflow Diary. So he says, "Move at the speed of instruction." That I believe, and I think about this often when I'm talking with people on consults who are just in the more you are in indecision, the slower the results are going to come. Just decide. If it's a yes, decide and do it. If it's a no or I'm not sure, it's a no. Just don't do it. But just make clear decisions and move forward.
Move at the speed of your learning.
Instruction. Yeah.
Move at the
Yeah. He says move at
Your
the
learning,
speed of
immediately move.
just
Basically.
decide. Just decide. People are afraid to say no, but just say no. You can always say yes later. But being in this wishy-washy, I'm not sure what I want. Yes, you do. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. Just move on. Keep going.
That coming from a master salesperson right here. Yes, absolutely. Well, Jess, thank you so much for being here with us. We have loved having you here and learning all about what you do and all about masculine and feminine energy and God zone and creator mode and this new alternative, new, basic, complete new paradigm that Sophia could start in the art world. I am so fascinated by it. So I am so eternally grateful. I'm saying right now,
I am too.
thank you. Yes, God.
Yes,
So
thank you.
let's have you here on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was so awesome. And I want to be on the list. I want to be at the gallery opening. I'm going to invest in an art piece with Sophia Bosch. It's going to happen. Let's go.
It's good.
Yes.
So
Thank
well,
you.
thank you so much for being with us. To everyone listening. This is, like I said, this is our first recording for 2025 with a guest. And we are so excited to bring stories like, and amazing women like Jess, in 2025 that we can all learn from, that we can all be inspired from. And if you have an amazing woman in your life that want to share this podcast with, please do so. And definitely leave us a 5-star review for sure. Thank you so much. Until the next one.